Hello, and welcome back to the Sober Connection with me, Abby King. My guest today, I actually don't know that much about. The reason why I have asked him onto my podcast is because he's a Kiwi and he's talking about sobriety, and there's not that many of us around. So I thought it would be an interesting conversation to have as somebody that's kind of going through the same experience as me. So, yeah, not much of an intro to give, but I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'm just going to get curious and ask questions, and yeah, hopefully we have a good chat. So my guest today is Ryan Nell. Hi, Ryan. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm really good. Thank you, Abby. How are you?
Good. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. It's awesome. So, yeah, literally don't know anything about you other than what I've scrolled through on Instagram. So, yeah, let's start with the beginning. So, you're originally from South Africa. When did drinking become a thing for you?
Yeah, look, I wasn't really a big drinker at all until the age of about 30 when I moved over to the UK.
Okay.
Um, and prior to that, it was more like a weekend thing or when I was going out with my mates. When I lived in the UK, it kind of became an everyday thing. And I think the saying is the pub is an extension of your living room. So you would go meet friends and have social events at the pub, and then it just escalated from there. Came back to New Zealand, carried on drinking, and needed to have a drink to go out or to hang out with friends or just have a good time was where my mentality was. And it just kind of took over really. And yeah, it's just something that needed to change for me really.
Yeah, right. So when did you start drinking? Were you drinking as a kid? Like I started when I was 14. Nothing like that
No,
really?
no. My dad was a big drinker, and he let me try beer when I was quite young, and I was repulsed by the taste. So it kind of put me off altogether. I'm going to parties and stuff. My friends weren't really drinkers at all. We were quite sporty, so drinking wasn't really a thing. Moving to New Zealand, it was a bit different. My sports kind of took a side turn. Started working, and then being more social, being a bit older, but still nothing crazy. I was still quite controlled. I still enjoyed my sports. I think when the sports stopped and my hobbies kind of took a side turn, I then moved towards drinking beer and wine and having that more of a focus than anything else.
Yeah, right. Right. But it was really like the UK was the UK's got a lot to answer for
Look, I
with their
love my
drinking
time in the UK.
culture.
I love my time in the UK. It was amazing, but I think I formed some really poor habits
Yeah,
over there.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
brought them back to New Zealand with me, and then just things escalated really.
Yeah, sure. So at what point did you decide that you wanted to change things?
Yeah, I went through a separation with my wife, and I remember sitting there one night alone, um, drunk, and missing my kids, missing my life, and just wondering what I was doing and how I'd got here. And I remember it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I decided that this was the lowest of the low for me, and something needed to change. And the one thing that I could really control was my drinking. And the thought process that I had was it's really difficult for me to say no to alcohol when I've started, but it's easier to say no before I start. Yeah, because my problem is once I got a taste for it, I just really enjoyed it and it became the life of the party, and I had a really good time. So I thought, and that would really things would escalate from there. So I thought, look, if I can just stop it altogether, then this problem would disappear, and effectively it did. So the next day I just sat there and I poured all the beer and the alcohol and the spirits down the drain, and that was it.
That was a pivotal
And
moment.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Like the low point, right? It was the point where it was just, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did this happen? Why am I sitting here and in this situation, and I don't want to be here. This is not where I
Yeah.
want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's like a definite realization. Like for me, I tried all the moderation. I tried, yeah, putting rules in place, and it just wasn't working. And eventually, I just had to. I think it took a while to get that sort of like self-awareness, but it was like, okay, if I, it's the first drink of the night that gets me into trouble because if I just don't have that, then I won't drink more and more and more and drink to blackout. So if I, but it took ages for me to realize, because I was terrified of giving up completely. I just really thought that I could hold on to this moderation thing. And, once you realize that it doesn't work. I mean, if we could moderate, we would be doing that. We wouldn't need to moderate if we could moderate, right?
Exactly
So,
right.
so it was, that realization, like that first drink is what gets me into trouble. I need to just not have that first drink, and I still live by that, like 4 years later. So, but yeah, it's a big when it's been a part of your life for so long, and it does become part of your identity and stuff. It's pretty scary, eh? But it's cool that you just kind of, that was it, just one attempt and you were done.
Yeah, I think my ex had said numerous times that there was a problem with alcohol, and I was not really believing it or wanting to believe it. So I had trialed stopping a couple of times, but if the decision isn't yours and you don't come there or get to that decision by yourself, I don't think you're truly committed, and I don't think you truly want to do it, if you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
you're doing
So,
it for other people, not for yourself.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, correct. And I think that played a big role as to why I would stop for a couple of weeks, and then I would go, oh, I'll just have one, or, and then all of a sudden you're back onto it again, right?
yeah,
The time when I separated, and I was sitting in that house by myself, that was different, because that was me wanting to do it, me coming to the realization that actually this is pretty shit.
yeah,
And I'm sitting here because of decisions that I can actually control, but I'm making the wrong decisions. So I need to do things differently. And because I came up with that by myself and I wanted to do it by myself, for myself, it was actually quite an easy decision for me.
yeah,
And I was able to follow through really easily. And I was able to not miss drinking at all, because I had a really clear goal on what I wanted to achieve.
yeah,
And it all just played out that way for me.
yeah.
So
Awesome.
it was quite easy for me.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it took me 4 years, so I take my hat off to anybody that can just be like, I'm done, and just like one attempt and be done. But yeah, I had countless day ones. I can't even. I wouldn't even like to think how many day ones I had. So it
Yeah.
was very frustrating by the end of it. I was absolutely knackered by the end of it. It was just like, I'm so done. I just got to quit. But so what did those first few weeks, first few months look like for you when you had actually quit?
It was hard. I had like withdrawals, and I was still living by myself and still alone and still quite miserable. And normally you would turn to having a beer or a glass of wine. So not having that to fall back on was difficult and was foreign. So I had to sit there with my thoughts, which was really challenging, if I'm being really honest. Can't hide behind anything. You can't numb any pain. The pain is all right there, and you feel all of it. And now it's quite confronting because
Mm,
you can't mask it. But that made me heal quicker, and that made me want to do things faster and made me want to do things better. And it helped me make much better and more informed decisions around what I wanted to do. And so I run my own business, and I did then as well. And I can quite clearly remember sitting back a couple of weeks in to the change and realizing how much more productive I was and how much more business was happening, because I was hungrier. I was responsive very quickly, and I was making way better decisions. And so I saw a direct correlation between the performance of my business and my sobriety. And then, the other thing is that I really wanted to be involved, hands-on father to my kids. And I wanted to be the dad that was running around, playing football with them, bouncing around on the trampoline, not the one lying on the couch, nursing a hangover
yeah,
or feeling like shit, right?
yeah,
So all of a sudden, I had all this energy. All of a sudden, I wanted to be running around playing, and I could feel and I could see a difference almost instantly. And that was a huge amount of motivation for me just
yeah.
to keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's I know I always the whole kind of thing of, oh, but um, sobriety is so boring, and it's like lying on your couch on a Sunday afternoon all day, hungover, ignoring the kids. That's boring,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I used to
yeah,
do it all the time, but my kids would be. I remember I always used to get up in the morning, or very late in the morning. My kids would have been up for hours, and I'd be like, DVD day, kids. And they at the start they thought it was brilliant because they were
yeah,
just going to be watching DVDs all day, and mum was going to be lying on the couch snoozing. We were going to have a shit dinner. We were going to drink some fizzy drinks, and that was going to be our Sunday. And then even they got bored of it. Like they were like, "Oh, can we go and play outside, or can we go and do something?" And I'm like, "Oh,
no,
yeah, parenting is just parenting when you're hungover. I mean, parenting's hard anyway, but hungover is just, yeah. Why
not
would you do
fun,
it? I did it for
not
so
fun.
long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how old are your kids now?
Now my daughter's 15 and my little boy is 11 and a half.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
So
you've
they're
been
very
sober
sporty.
for 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So they were, yeah, little, yeah.
Yeah.
Mine
Baby.
were. I gave up only 4 years ago. By the time I actually gave up, I started trying 8 years ago. It took me 4 years, but they're sort of late teens now, sort of 18, 17, and 15. But yeah, I kind of I feel a massive sense of mum guilt that I was drinking when they were sort of 10 and younger, but I sort of put it back to sort of just being, I'm from the UK originally. We had two restaurants that we were running. My husband was always at work. Not much of a support network, lonely, overwhelmed, all of those excuses where I bought into that mummy wine culture, and that
Yeah,
was that's what I did. And I send them off to bed quickly, read them a quick story, maybe if I could be bothered, and then just get to the couch and my wine, and it's so sad to look back on that now, but I think, yeah, it's good to be able to make amends, like I'm sure, having that experience. I mean, we haven't talked about it on here, but you took your son to LinkedIn, Lincoln Park.
yeah,
On
yeah,
sorry, I had a LinkedIn logo just up on my laptop that I just looked at. So you took him to Sydney to LinkedIn Park. Oh my
yeah.
God,
Lincoln Park.
Lincoln
Yeah,
Park
yeah,
on
yeah.
the weekend. How good is that?
Yeah.
So yeah,
It was amazing. It was amazing.
yeah,
Like so, being sober and being in Sydney with my little boy, I would think that if it was different, we would go for lunch and have a beer, or we would go and have a drink at Circular Quay, and looking at the Opera House. But instead, we did the Bondi to Coogee walk, and then we swam along the way. And we went to Luna Park and we did all of the theme parks and stuff, and we spent the whole day at Taronga Zoo, Sydney
yeah,
Zoo, walking around. So I think the children get the best version of myself
yeah,
because I
yeah,
don't drink, because
yeah,
we are out doing stuff all the time, not sitting down having drinks, or in the evenings having drinks and then being a bit shady the next day.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm up at 6 o'clock every day. I have huge amounts of energy and I bounce out of bed and I feel great. And they see that, and they know
yeah,
that. I play football with them, I play hockey with them, I do with my daughter, we go to the gym together, so like we're really, really active family, and I would struggle to see the old me in this life because it would look completely different, and the kids and their experience with dad would be the complete opposite.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
and
yeah.
I, I would hate to see what that would look like,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, you just if everything circulates around getting to that next drink, or let's go to a pub for lunch, or then it's not actually an experience that the kids don't want to sit in a pub
No,
while
no,
like they don't really
no,
care.
no.
They'd rather go to the zoo, or I mean, it's you've become very sort of like kid centric, like everything's revolving around the kids, whereas before when we were drinking, everything revolved around getting to the next pub. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So no, that's cool. What surprised you the most about being alcohol free?
That's probably a couple of things. I think when I first did it, I always thought that I needed a drink to have fun or to relax,
Yeah,
especially in like social situations. And I thought that I needed to rely on alcohol to just relax me or allow me to have a good time. That wasn't the case. So I had some really good friends who were really supportive when I told them that I wanted to stop drinking. I would still go out to the pub and I would still go out to bars and restaurants. They wouldn't let me go to the bar and order drinks, but they would come back with a Coke for me or a ginger beer. So they wouldn't allow me to. Well, they were kind of protective. They wouldn't allow me to put myself in a situation where I was ordering drinks for everyone else. Where maybe it was going to be a bit difficult for me. It wasn't, but I felt the support and the care and the love of my friends, which was really, really cool, actually.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think probably the performance of my business instantly, the change, because I was present all the time. I think that was something that really, really, really jumped out. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought I was pretty good as it was. So I didn't think that was going to level up, which it did. So I was grateful for that. And I think something else that probably surprised me was my view on fitness and health and well-being. I didn't really have a view on that, if I'm being honest. I was quite overweight. Ate poorly, as you do when you have a big night. Then you eat really bad food.
Greasy food. Yeah.
Coffee, don't have breakfast, have like McDonald's
Greasy food and a Coke.
It's like really awesome. So I think my view changed and I was conscious of what I was eating. I started to run. I did half marathons. I attended the gym and I got really hungry for getting the best version physically of myself. That surprised me because it really wasn't ever on my radar. Ever. And as we get a little bit mature,
wiser,
you got one body, so you want to look after it so that you can make sure that you're still able to use it later on in life. But that's a really big focus for me now.
Yeah.
And I never was someone that really enjoyed the gym. I would sign up to the gym, I would join the gym, I would go 3 or 4 times, and then I wouldn't go again. That was rinse, repeat for me. So this time it's different. And now I go, 4 times a week and I do swimming and I do yoga, I do running and I play football and I'm really active and my body represents that. And I feel really strong and really healthy and really fit, in the best shape I've ever been in my life. At 48. So that speaks volumes for me. That tells me everything I need to know around what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and why I'm doing it. So I think that those points are probably the things that surprise me the most.
Yeah, cool. I think, definitely when you sort of stop poisoning yourself and you get that sort of clarity about what you've been doing. For me, I've educated myself a lot read a lot of scientific stuff, listened to lots of podcasts around it, Huberman's podcast about alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And, those facts are really scary, like what it's actually doing to your body when you're drinking and knowing that no level of alcohol is going to benefit you at all, So all of those things. And I think when you have that clarity, when you actually step away from it, and then longevity becomes something that you're actually striving for, right? And I want to be here for as long as possible so that I can be with my kids for as long as possible and their kids. And, and my Nana lived until she was 94. My mum's going strong, in her 70s. I'm approaching 48 myself. And, I feel like I've got the potential to last for quite a while if I do everything right, as long as, everything goes my way. But that wasn't a priority for me before. Like I would go to the gym, but if I was hungover, which was often, I would never make it to the gym. So it was just really, really inconsistent. And now for me, I'm at the gym 5 or 6 times a week if I can, doing all this stuff, signing up to stupid things like half marathons and things like that. And it's also good for my kids to see, and same for you, having that active lifestyle is, we want to be the best role models that we can for our kids. I definitely wasn't that, 5 years ago. And, so now I want them to see that, we can change and we can do better and we can live a good life and, be healthy and stuff. So it's important.
I think living a long life is important, but I think the quality of your life as well until the very end is really important too. And I think we live longer these days, but I think about my gran and my relatives that are older. The quality of life towards the end wasn't that great, because their bodies were clapping out on them. So living a long life, but also having that quality all the way is probably a big focus for me as well, which is why I put such a big emphasis now into my health and my body, because if you don't use it, you lose it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what is in my mind all the time, and like my mantra, so that, even if it's sore, I go and I run, or I go and play football, and then I've got a sore back the next day, but I'm out there doing it because I know if I stop, then in a year's time, I probably won't be able to do it anymore. So I want to
Yeah.
keep going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, no, fair enough. What did you think that alcohol was giving you that you had to learn to replace? I mean, you said before that you thought you couldn't have fun without it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was confidence probably. Like I would go to a lot of social events and I would have to entertain for work, and having a drink in my hand was kind of like my comfort blanket, I would say. And I just felt, not invincible, but I just felt really confident if I had that beer or that glass of wine in my hand. And I was always worried that by removing that, what would I replace it with? What would be that thing that would still give me that confidence but be different? And I think that really played in my mind quite a bit. That really
It's
played in my mind.
almost a feeling like, are you enough without it? And we are
Yeah,
enough without it. In fact, actually, we're better. But yeah, I guess if you've been using it for so long, then it just, yeah, it's hard to think about how you will talk to people and that confidence and everything without it, right? So yeah.
100%, 100%. So I was nervous, for the first time when I was going into those environments, being different. But I also realized that, after a couple of hours, everyone would be telling the same stories over and over, and I would be going, "Well, I've heard this before." So my whole perception then started to change, and by not drinking and not having that drink in my hand actually was my superpower, right? My confidence, because I always felt that I was really sharp. I was really onto it, and I could see things and I could read the room really quickly. I wasn't
Mhm.
slow to react. I could see what was happening and unfolding. And my conversation and my questioning with people I didn't know or knew was different. It was more about connection, it was more about the person than about what they did, or what they did on the weekend. In fact, when people would ask me questions like that, or what I did for a job, I wouldn't answer it. I would skirt around it and try and make it more personal, to have a real conversation and have a proper connection with someone, as opposed to talking about the rugby
Surface
or what
level,
you do in the
surface
yeah,
level
which really
conversations.
was boring for me. But
Yeah.
when I was drinking, that was my comfort level. That's what we spoke
Mm.
about. How are the All Blacks doing? Boxing the All Blacks, blah blah blah. All that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's really not that interesting.
Yeah.
When you go around a room at a work situation, you're having that same conversation with everyone,
With
and it
everybody.
becomes
Yeah,
pretty
15 times.
tiring pretty quickly, right? But the beauty of it is that there's so many people that you don't know anything about,
Mm.
that you can get to learn, really
Yeah.
quickly by asking some really, creative questions, and allowing people to open up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think initially not having the can or the wine in my hand was anxiety provoking, and then it really quickly shifted to me going, by not having that also was a really good conversation starter,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the number of people, "Oh, do you want a drink?" And I'd go, "Oh no, I'm fine. I'll just have an orange juice." And they look at you and they're like, "Are you driving?" And I go, "Yeah, yeah, but I don't drink." And then all of a sudden, the whole conversation would start. And initially, I always thought that people would shame me for that. They would say, "Oh, what's wrong?" Or, "What's the reason behind it?" But I took great pride in explaining why I didn't do it anymore. And to my surprise, I would say like 95% of people really positive.
Yeah.
Really positive. A couple of
Yeah.
people would say things like, "Oh, well, why can't you just have one drink?" And I'd explain
If
that.
only. If only.
But even then, like I would say, why? Why
Yeah.
would you just have one? Like,
Yeah.
what is why? Why do you need that? And I go, I know why I needed that, and I would say why, and then I would ask them. I said, so why do you think you need to have the drink? Why is your go-to reaching for the glass of wine when it comes round, or going to the fridge and grabbing one. Why do you not go for a ginger beer instead? And
Yeah.
then that's the conversation we have, and it's fascinating. It's really
Yeah.
fascinating. And then, like, it's a mirror for some people, and it's confronting for them. And some people don't really want to look into the mirror, and some people do. And then
Yeah.
if they do, it actually turns into a really cool conversation. And that's not me trying to shame them or change them. It's just about having a really good conversation about them talking about something they've probably never really
Never really
talked
thought
about
about.
or thought
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
And there's no pressure. I'm not trying to convert them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
It's okay. It's not a cult.
no, not yet. Um, but people are open to the conversation. It actually can be really awesome.
Yeah.
Be really, really
Yeah.
awesome. And
Especially for you, like 8 years. I mean, 8 years ago, that's when I first started trying to quit. There was a lot more stigma then about people not drinking than there is now. Like it's
yeah,
way more widely accepted now.
yeah,
But for me, I mean, you're in Auckland, right? So it's probably a
mm,
little bit different. I was in small town New Zealand, and everybody drank, like farmers, tradies, like everybody. And I'd try and quit, and people would be like, "Why? Like, what the fuck's that? What the fuck's wrong with you? Like, why
yeah,
are you trying to quit? Like,
mm,
just have a drink, man. Like, stop being soft." And it was really hard. It's like I just don't want to. I shouldn't have to be justifying why I don't want to drink, but I did, and it definitely kept me in that loop for way longer than it should have done, because I wasn't surrounded by supportive people. I was surrounded by people that were taking the piss, and so yeah, it's really, really hard. Like a conversation that I had recently with somebody, another guest, was, your circle is really, really important when you're trying to quit, because like if you haven't got that support, then you're not gonna succeed. So but yeah, no, it's always interesting. I think when I used to overshare the reason why I wasn't drinking. There'd be like this big long, oh well, I retired early, and all these sort of stupid jokes. Now I just say I don't drink, and 9 times out of 10 people, even if they've got a drink in their hand, they'll be like, "Oh, good on you," or they do get curious about it, and they do ask questions. Whereas before it was like, "Are you pregnant?" There could be no other reason why I would not want to drink. I must be pregnant, So
you're spot on. And I think a lot of people's response when I first announced it, not to my friends, but to people that didn't know me, they would say, "Oh, is everything okay? Like, are you sick?"
yeah,
And I'm like, no,
on
I'm
antibiotics.
not sick. Nothing's wrong for me to, health-wise, for me to give up. I've just made the decision because it feels
Yeah,
like the right thing for me to do,
yeah,
my choice. But initially, a lot of people were like, "Oh, is everything okay? Like, what's wrong?" People's perception around not drinking goes straight to health.
yeah.
You know, mm,
Yeah. Do you, obviously you're Ryan the Sober Kiwi, and there's not that many of us in New Zealand sort of standing on our little soapboxes
yeah.
and talking about this. What was the decision behind that for you to kind of, I mean, you've got a pretty decent following on Instagram, and what was the decision around that for you to kind of start doing content and talking about it?
Yeah, I think it was to keep me honest, by putting stuff out there about what I was doing and all the fun things that I was doing. Not so much about not drinking, but about what I was actually doing, going out to the sports events, going overseas. It was about me looking back and going, look at all the cool things I get to do,
Hmm.
and it's a reminder of the life that I've chosen now to
Yeah,
live, you know?
yeah,
And if other people want to follow it and they want to see it and they enjoy it, or it's inspiration or it's given them ideas, I don't really care. It's just a platform for me to share what I'm doing. And if people like it and they want to see and they follow or they get ideas, and that's great. I don't think I did it for anything more than a reminder to myself
yeah. That's cool.
around the life that I've chosen. And I
Yeah,
and I and I think, if I was pushing it or I was trying to do all these other things, it wouldn't be authentic and it wouldn't be me. But yeah, Ryan the Sober Kiwi, it was different names. It was No Beer, No Fear originally, and then I changed it to Ryan the Sober Kiwi because I wanted it to be more relatable to Kiwis, because our drinking culture here is binge, and it's not that great in my opinion. And I think there is a shift starting to happen with the younger generation coming through,
Yeah.
specifically around their health and
Yeah.
not drinking. And I think if I bring it back to me, my kids, my daughter follows me and she gets to see what I'm putting up. She gets to see the fun, awesome things that I'm doing, even when she's not around. And I'm a role model, I'm a role model for her around not needing alcohol in your life. We have conversations about it, and I think she should probably be, as a teenager, she probably will have a couple of drinks, but I don't think she's going to be a big drinker. I think her sports and everything is really important to her. And I hope that my positive influence around alcohol will rub off on her and that she doesn't choose to let it become a big part of her life.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with your comment about the drinking culture over here. I mean, coming from the UK as well, which is huge. What's the drinking culture like in South Africa? I know like you left South Africa like at
Yeah.
the end of your teens, right? So
Yeah.
but what's it like over there? Because obviously there's a big rugby culture. Does the drinking kind of like match in with that the same as it does
Yes.
here, or
Yeah,
yeah?
I think New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, very, very similar culturally. People are very similar, and
I think you
yeah,
just don't really hear about South Africa as much. I mean, I always kind of like club together New Zealand, Australia, and the UK, but
yeah.
yeah.
I think the drinking culture in South Africa with men is quite big. A lot of beer, a lot of rum and whiskey drinking.
Okay.
Around the braai is what they would call it, which is the barbecue. But that's an all-day event.
Right.
And it's hot, it's sunny, and people are in the sun all day drinking, or at the rugby or the cricket. It's the same. And then it goes into the night, and then people drive home. So, it's the same but different.
Yeah.
There's not much of a shift in the culture around drinking. It's quite big over there. Mm.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's definitely like going back to what you were saying about your daughter. I've got 18, 17 and 15-year-old girls, and I think really like my story of taking 4 years to quit and then where I'm at now plays a huge part in them drinking. Like I have bought them drinks. I've bought them drinks so they've gone to a party. I've bought them a six pack, and it's they'll come home with two or three, they haven't smashed the whole
Yeah.
six pack. So but I was talking to somebody the other day, and just that difference with like the influencers now, like my influences back in the 90s in the UK, growing up as a teenager, the girls that I used to look at on TV, obviously we didn't have social media then, but the girls on TV, there was that ladette culture, it was called. And so the
Yeah.
girls were like drinking pints and smoking fags and drinking boys under the table and like being all Larry. And those are the people that we looked up to as females, like teenage girls, like, oh, they're so cool. Like, look at them drinking pints. Those were our influences.
Yeah.
Now my kids, they're following gym influencers. Some of them are shit, but it's a way healthier thing to be following, and people making smoothies and doing yoga in the morning and meditation and journaling and all that kind of stuff. It's way more that
Nice.
than so I mean, yeah, it goes to reason that they wouldn't be as influenced with watching somebody get Larry and drunk and falling out of taxis and stuff like that, which
Yes.
I thought was so cool. But like my kids would just be like, oh, like shame.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So
Come on, mom. Sort it out.
yeah, sort it out. Yeah. You said before you had like pretty supportive mates when you first quit. Did you get any pushback or anything? Or did you lose friends? That whole kind of like drinking, not really.
No, I mean, no, I didn't. I think I was the life of the party. I would drink a lot, and I think a lot of my friends saw that, and I think when I made the decision to not want to do that anymore, they probably all thought it was a really good idea,
A really good
right?
idea.
Which probably
Finally.
doesn't speak great, but you know, but I mean, I think like you gotta be honest with yourself, right? And yeah, I think they were really supportive because they thought it was a good idea.
Yeah,
Um,
cool.
that a lot of them probably didn't think I would keep going. They probably thought I was just taking a break,
Yeah,
like, or pausing, So to keep going, I think it was really, really, they were impressed, I think,
cool.
and that made it easier as well. I mean, I was very lucky. I didn't really have any pushback from anyone. Occasionally someone would say, "Oh, why did you have one?" Like I said before, but those weren't my friends. That was more like an acquaintance or someone that was part of a group that I didn't really know.
Yeah, and didn't understand the situation.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's fine, that's all good. But yeah, no, I was very lucky to have a really good support network. But even then, I don't think that would have made a difference if they weren't, because the decision sits with you always.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, even if they were trying to, make me drink, blah blah blah, it's still my decision. You know what I mean? So I think you've got to own that, and you've got to sit with that, and you've got to make the decision that this is what you want to do, and then you've got to stick to it. And I do believe that if you really want to do it, and your reasons for doing it are really authentic, and you can see that the impact that it's going to make in your life by doing this, I do think it is an easier decision than you think. But if you're getting pressured, or you're getting pushed, or you're getting encouraged by somebody else, and it's not really something that you want to do, you're going to struggle, and you're
Yeah.
probably going to cave. And that's what happened to me, you know, until
Yeah.
until it was my decision, until it was me wanting to go, I'm changing. I've had enough of this. It's not working for me. I'm making poor decisions. I want to live a better life. I want to be different, and I want people to see me differently. You're not going to change.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, it did, like I said, it took me 4 years, but I just wasn't ready. I was terrified of what it would mean for me. Like I was pretty unhappy in my marriage, and the thought of like, well, what does that mean for that, you know? And we had businesses together, and obviously the kids and stuff like that. I was in small town New Zealand, no parents, nobody that I knew around me, you know, like friends, but it turns out that they were majority were drinking buddies, you know, and so that sort of dropped off pretty quickly. But I think that's probably why I kept going back, and you know, that whole FOMO and stuff like that. But I got to a point where I just wanted my sobriety so much more than I wanted all of that. And that was when the shift happened. And then, yeah, sort of 11 months down the track, after 11 months of sobriety, I got the courage to walk out on my marriage. And then here we are, sort of thing. But yeah, there was a lot of excuses for why I wasn't quitting for a long while there. But yeah, like you said, once you actually make that decision, like, no, there's more to life than this, and I want to see it. That's kind of where I got to finally. But what does your day look like now compared to back when you were drinking?
Well, normally struggling to get out of bed was a big thing for me, So now I get up at 6 o'clock every morning, and I walk downstairs, have a coffee, and I'll probably meditate for about 10 minutes, do some stretching, and then take the kids off to school, go to the gym, go for probably work for about 4 or 5 hours, and then go pick the kids up. Sports is a big part of their life, and then maybe go to the gym with my daughter in the evening, and then just go for a walk on the beach, or hang out with some friends, go watch a movie, and in bed by 10:30, and then up at 6 o'clock again. It's really good life.
Wholesome. Yeah,
It's really
wholesome
wholesome.
days. Yeah.
Like the moving the body, getting the 8 hours of sleep, all really, really important, and I sleep really well now. I used to drink a lot to help me sleep, but I wouldn't sleep very well.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though I'd be in bed a lot longer, and I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. It would be a real struggle to get out of bed,
Yeah.
and I'd be moping around, and it would take me a long time to wake up. Whereas now I'd bounce out of bed, and I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
And I have lots of energy, and I think that's probably the standout for me, is that I have huge amounts of energy all the time. I just don't get tired, and I feel amazing. I
Yeah.
feel and I look amazing, the best I've ever felt and looked in my life. And that again is motivation to
Yeah.
keep going.
To
When you've
keep
got
going.
something that's great and it's working, you don't change it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's not
Yeah.
working and it's not great and you're making bad decisions, then you've got to look at it and go, well, what are we going to do here differently to make it better, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, now that
Yeah.
I'm on a good ride, I don't see that changing. And people always ask me, would you ever drink ever again? And I go, why? That's my response. Why would I?
Yeah.
Why would I change all of this to go backwards? Doesn't make any sense to me. And it's been such a long time now. I don't need alcohol. I thought I needed it, but I don't need it. And I don't want it, and I have no judgment around other people that drink, and It doesn't affect me, people drinking in front of me, and I don't judge them, that's their choice and that's great, it's just not for me,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. What's one thing about alcohol that you wish more people questioned?
Probably, well, it's a drug, right? It's a drug. And so many drugs are illegal, but this
Mm.
one is a taxed one, where the government makes a lot of money on it. But the
There's your answer.
implications, but the implications and the health concerns around drinking alcohol in excess is massive. Not so much now, but later on in life. And I wish that was more of a focus for people. What's going to happen later, instead of enjoying myself so much right now and worrying
Mm.
about it later, because later catches up with you and then it becomes a big problem. And like I was saying earlier on, it's great to live long and have that a long life, but it's also the quality of that long life. Do
Yeah.
you want to be, stuck in a wheelchair or bedridden because your body's packed in, or
Mm.
your brain's not working in the way that it could be or should be, So I wish that was more on people's radar,
Yeah.
um, than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm.
think yeah, I think there's a lot of non-information out there about alcohol. I think, there's even the advertising, everyone's having such a great time. You get barbecues and isn't it wonderful? And it's very sophisticated. Well, that's actually not the truth for a lot of people. A lot of it can be pretty isolating. It can be pretty lonely when you're drinking a bit more, and that shame spiral when you know that you're drinking too much but you don't know how to get help and you think you're the only one, and all of those thoughts. There's lots of questions that should be getting asked, but unfortunately they're not. Have you got any final words for somebody that's listening to this that is kind of thinking about jumping on the wagon or off the
Yeah.
wagon, whichever one it is?
Off the wagon, on the way. Yeah, off the wagon. I think it's off the wagon.
The wagon.
I think, if you're thinking about it and it's on your radar, then you probably know that it's something that needs to change. And my question would be, what are you waiting for? Right? What are you waiting for? There's no better time than the present, and if it's something you're thinking about, then it's probably something that you need to change. And I think my biggest regret is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
if you're watching this and it's on your radar and you're thinking or wondering, maybe should I? The answer is yes, you should. And I encourage you to give it a go. And even if you end up going back and having another drink, it doesn't matter. You start again, because the health benefits and the mental health benefits are superior. And I encourage you to do it 100%.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think there's never the right time as well. Everyone's like, oh, but I've got this coming up and this coming up. And I mean, we get through these things now without a drink, and it's I mean, yeah, it can be tricky sometimes. The first wedding or the first birthday where you haven't had a drink and got yourself written off. But is that really a fun birthday when you're getting yourself written off anyway? Maybe you could go and do something wholesome instead.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I tend to go make sure that I'm usually either about to go on holiday or I'm away somewhere cool for my birthday now, because that's important to me these days. Travel is important for me as opposed to getting written off and lying on the couch hungover. So it's a change in priorities.
Yeah, it's money down the drain, right? Isn't it? Right. So you're changing it from buying something that ends up having a detrimental effect on your health to an experience that you'll remember for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
definitely.
when you say those words out loud, it's which one do you choose? Which one would you
Yeah.
rather have? That's quite an easy answer. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the same. I'm the same.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Well, enjoy your concert. I hear you're going again to not
Mm.
LinkedIn Park, but
Yeah, yeah, they sound great.
Sorry about that. Like a real brain fart there, but Lincoln Park
Yeah.
again tonight.
Yes.
Different experience. Not with your son tonight, but
Yeah.
I hope you have a great time. It's been really really cool to have a conversation with you and to get to know you and your story. So thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully I'll catch up with you soon.
Likewise, it was lovely to meet you, Abby.
Yeah, you too, Ryan. All right, take care. And to the
Yeah.
listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our chat, and I will talk to you again soon. All right, take care.
Cheers.